Moving on to committee reports. First report is audit and assurance. John, is there anything to add to your report?
Just a couple of points, if I may. There's a typo on there that says the annual audit letter for 3017/18 was approved. In fact, it was 2017/18. In fact, under our delegated responsibilities, the committee approved the annual audit letter for the last financial year. I think that was the key piece of business that was transacted on the 14th of August. It's been referred to earlier that we looked at the back and gained a great deal of assurance together with that and the risk register. We also took a great deal of assurance from the progress that was being made on by internal audit, and certainly made comments about certain items that we wanted brought forward or quickened up, shall we say, in terms of particularly the quit and getting some greater assurance earlier in the financial year than we had been expecting. And I think that's probably it. The elements I want to draw out anyway.
Okay. Any questions for John? Okay. Moving forward, finance and performance. Ray.
I don't think there is anything more than I temporarily stood in chairing it like committee for Martin, but
thank you very
much. Years come to tighten the reins. I suppose the only thing I wanted just to flag up was the last item in the middle paragraph about finance. There are two things out there that we're not quite sure about. One is the cost of the drugs with no other supply, where we hope there's going to be NHS funding, but it hasn't actually been specified. And the second unfunded thing that is national is the GP pay rise, which is probably about 15%, but I'm not sure. But just to flag up those two things, and I would like to hand over to Malcolm.
Thank you very much.
Any questions on that, Ray?
No, my only comment on the pay rise, I mean, we're in other places we're acknowledging that in the meantime we may need to sort of recognise it's a risk against contingency, because there's been no assurance so far that it will be funded. So I think it is something we've got to recognise as a potential risk cost.
Okay, thank you. PCCC, Ray?
I don't think, I suppose the major, apart from what's written down, is that I was extremely happy that it was a major focus of the Pricewaterhouse review, and because I was uncomfortable with the arrangements, I'm happy and await the decision of the CCG at how it wants to move forward. But clearly how it was inappropriate, in particular the relationship between people and the senior management team.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Malcolm?
Just one point, it was probably before John came, there was a requirement which came out from NHS England about assurance from an internal audit perspective on delegated commissioning. There was quite an uproar of audit chairs because that requirement came out after everyone's audit plan had been agreed. That has now been revised, and it's a sort of assurance over a 3-year period rather than an assurance that has to be given in the year 18-19. So I think that is just important. And previous years' internal audits can be taken as part of that assurance, but it was a challenging debate that came out very late in the day from NHS England.
Okay, thank you for that. Peck.
Public Engagement Committee. I think there is one error on page 2 of that report, which is page 183 of the board pack, which refers to consider the most appropriate place for the public members for the LCNs, because there are lots of public members, so it just creates a confusion. And this relates specifically to the gap that we'd identified that how CCG doesn't have a link in how it engages with the LCNs. So there was a paper which came to PEC where there were 2 roles that had been identified for each of the LCNs, and that makes it almost 16 members, and clearly, in terms of resources, is that effective or not, and where it should sit. But so I think it was just the roles that had been identified, but there was no strategic vision about how it's going to function effectively and the practicalities of that. So clearly, PEC raised that issue.
Okay.
I think that's about all I have to say. The rest is all written in it. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that one? Okay, finally, Alison, quality.
All right, just to say that it has read, but just to draw attention to the Sussex healthcare situation and the activity that's being undertaken in relation to working with Sussex healthcare around their services and the huge amount of activity that's taking place in order to continue to mitigate risks and take action there as required. Just one thing to mention to the governing body, particularly following the media interest in relation to child and adolescent mental health services, not just in this area but across the country, and it's something that I personally have worked with for a long time, particularly in relation to Tier 4 beds, to just bring attention to the governing body around the activity that's taking place, particularly within this area across child and adolescent mental health services, and that is through Sussex Partnership Trust and across the Alliance, I think it would be fair to say, and I don't know whether Alison wanted to add anything else to that as of today.
Thank you. I think in terms of the CAMS provision, I think we will be taking a paper back to the Quality Committee next time we meet in November. I think there's a wider piece of work that's ongoing, which Adam probably will want to brief the governing body on, but just in terms of it being in the line of sight of the Quality Committee, clearly it is very important. We will want to make sure that the quality and safety is assured.
So it is a national issue, but we see it in Sussex.
Yes.
I think it's really important.
Yes.
Andy, sorry. So the approach that we're applying, having agreed with all of the council chief executives, both the West Sussex, Brighton Hove and East Sussex, myself and Sam Allen, the chief executive of the Mental Health Trust, will be asking for a rapid review of these services in general, to do 2 things. One, to be really clear about what the service provision currently offer is, how well is that performing, and are there areas where we are not covering this these children and young people with the right service going forward. And we're going to do that with a lens looking through it really from a local government boundary. Across our STP area, we believe some actually perform very well and some could be strengthened, but I believe we have got particular issues in West Sussex, and we need to be clear how we handle that going forward. So we're just working out the terms of reference for that review and then working out who will be the most appropriate person to do that for us, and I'll cite each of the relevant quality committees through Alison on the approach that we're taking with that going forward.
Thank you, Adam. That's very helpful. No more questions on that. Okay, that finishes the governing body in public today. So I'd like to make the resolution that in accordance with the provision of section 1(2) of the Public Bodies Act 1960, it is resolved that the representatives of the press and other members of the public are excluded from the second part of the governing body meeting on the grounds that it is prejudicial to the public interest due to the confidential nature of the business about to be transacted.